All right, I'm just going to come out and say it. We're past peak motorcycles. The golden days are behind us. And it's kind of ironic because by most metrics, bikes have never been better. They're faster, more advanced, even safer than before. But at the same time, they've never felt more stuck. Every new model year, every new bike, every new mind-blowing feature I see, it all starts to feel a little pointless. Like we're just remixing the same idea over and over and over again. So what happened? Did manufacturers run out of ideas, or are they being boxed in by regulations, economics, and the laws of physics? Because when you actually stop to think about it, you realize motorcycles didn't stop being able to improve, they just kind of ran out of meaningful ways to do it. And today, I'm going to break down exactly how that happened. Let's jump in. At the rate we're going, by 2035, Kawasaki is going to be selling a Ninja 800 as their beginner bike, making 46 beautiful horsepower. That's not even that crazy, because if you look at the last 20 years, entry-level motorcycles have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We went from 250s to 300s to 400s, now 450s marketed as 500s. You might think of this as progress, that bigger is better, like the manufacturer really wants you to get the most bang for your beginner bike buck. But that's not really the case, because much of this displacement creep comes down to emissions. Smaller, high-revving, high-stressed engines are harder to meet new standards. They're working harder, spinning faster, and producing more emissions relative to their size. The solution? Well, it's easy. Bump up those cubes and make the same amount of power as the smaller engine. More displacement, less stress, less emissions per cc, and maybe a touch more torque while they're at it. At first glance, it looks like you're getting more motorcycle for the money, but it's not really the case. And this is where things start to get kind of weird. As the default beginner bikes creep towards 500cc, they're also getting heavier and more expensive. A Ninja 500 can run you close to $8,000 out the door depending on the trim. So now there's room at the bottom of the lineup for a new category that we've been calling beginner light. Sub 300cc bikes, bargain pricing, stripped down, built for the most budget-conscious riders, and oftentimes they're motorcycles brought over from other world markets where small, cheap, simple bikes are the norm. Bikes like the KTM Duke 250 or Kawasaki's air-cooled KLX 230. Kawasaki might even bring back the Ninja 300 to sit under the 500. Which is hilarious because they're the ones who helped push displacement up in the first place. We're basically being swallowed by a displacement creep Ouroboros. Beginner bikes get bigger, so we have to make new smaller bikes to compensate, which just restarts the cycle all over again. It's a bit silly. But beginner bikes aren't the only category that are stuck in a weird loop, because on the other end of the spectrum, big power bikes have their own problems. So for years, the goal of a manufacturer's flagship motorcycle was really simple: make more power, faster bikes for racing, for bragging rights, for cultural relevance. And for a long time, it worked. There were always new ways to extract more performance. Variable valve timing, ram air, better chassis design. The leap from a 2000s superbike to a 2016 superbike was massive. But now we've kind of solved for really fast. Modern superbikes are so powerful that they're basically unusable without electronics. Traction control, slide control, launch control, all of it exists to make a 215 horsepower motorcycle rideable by a normal human being. And don't get me wrong, that tech is really incredible. What these bikes are capable of in the right hands is genuinely mind-blowing. I mean, they're like a cheat code on the racetrack. But objectively, we're past the point of meaningful gains. Every increase in power now requires another layer of tech to keep it in check, which makes bikes more complex, more expensive, and honestly, less accessible. And the craziest part is, all of this effort is going towards gains that most riders will never actually use. I mean, how many of you are speedrunning your commute at 186 miles per hour like Jixer Bra, and you just got a job as an email shuffling project manager? So what are we really chasing here? Is it clout? Brand dominance? The respect of our fathers? Because at this point, there's no real need for more power, especially when it just means more tech, more cost, and marginal improvement. The top end of motorcycling starts to become this over-engineered bubble that doesn't really connect back to the real world. And when you run out of meaningful ways to improve something, you don't stop building it, you just start kind of dressing it up a little bit, adding farkles here and there and making the consumer think that they're getting a better bike.
Riding motorcycles is fun. Shooting videos is fun. Editing video, well, let's be honest, it can be a bit of a slog. The fact that every social media platform requires different formatting makes it that much more difficult too. You need widescreen for long form, vertical for shorts, clips for whatever new app Gen Alpha will be using next week. That means you're constantly cropping and recropping the same footage over and over to optimize for each platform. Or even worse, reshooting entirely. The DJI Osmo Action 6 comes in clutch with 4K custom mode. Because of the large 1/1.1 square sensor, you shoot once and then crop it into whatever format you want later. Horizontal, vertical, it doesn't matter. Quality stays top notch and nothing gets degraded or misshapen. So instead of shooting multiple times or running a complex multi-cam system, you can just shoot once and optimize later. This camera cuts your workload down massively, which means you can keep riding and keep shooting without getting burnt out on the edit. Plus, the stabilization and image quality are top notch, making the DJI Osmo Action 6 the default choice for us here around the shop these days. If you want to make better videos while retaining your sanity, check out the DJI Osmo Action 6 in the description. Thanks to DJI for supporting us here at Yami Noob. Let's get back to the show.
So it's not just flagship superbikes that are a solved problem, it's motorcycles in general. In their modern form, they essentially execute the assignment perfectly. 2 wheels, an internal combustion engine, a frame, suspension, brakes. It's a simple formula that, in my opinion, has been basically fully optimized. We figured out how to make them fast, stable, reliable, and relatively safe. And since then, it's just been refinement. A little bit lighter, a little bit stiffer, a little bit more power. But at this point, it's getting harder and harder to justify any further polishing, which creates a problem. If the core product can't be meaningfully improved, how do you keep convincing people to buy new ones? Well, in my opinion, you sell the illusion of progress. Features have become the new currency of the modern motorcycle, much to my chagrin. Winglets on bikes that never see a racetrack, brake ducts on bikes making less than 100 horsepower, endless ride modes, menu diving, smartphone connectivity, features the average rider will probably never even touch. Things that look impressive in a showroom, but really don't matter on the road. Because as we mentioned earlier, flagship machines can't really get much faster in a meaningful way, but they can keep getting new tech, and that same philosophy trickles all the way down. Even beginner bikes, often constrained by A2 regulations, get loaded up with features as a primary selling point. No one is more emblematic of this right now than CF Moto. They pack their bikes with tech, styling, aero, LED startup sequences, everything they can add to the bike to make it feel more premium and cutting edge. And to be fair, it kind of works. A lot of new riders love this stuff. But once you've spent enough time actually riding, you start to realize just how much of it is fluff. Things you wouldn't notice if they disappeared overnight. I mean, really, if you remove the brake ducts and the winglets from your CF Moto, it's probably going to ride exactly the same. Because motorcycling itself isn't really improving. It's just the illusion that it is. And you even see this at the highest level. Look at MotoGP. You have unlimited budgets, the best riders in the world, and even there, they're chasing smaller and smaller gains. Lap times aren't dropping in huge ways anymore. It's kind of impossible. Most of the progress comes from aerodynamics, tire management, and tiny optimizations. The core motorcycle, it's already been kind of figured out. And at that level, they're not reinventing the machine, they're just kind of squeezing out the last percentage of something that's already been solved. So another thing I've been thinking about is that maybe we're past the peak motorcycle because the market is being pulled in 2 completely different directions. On one end, you've got value-driven bikes, and over the last 5 years, there's been a huge surge in motorcycles designed to be affordable, accessible, and easy to ride. Royal Enfield is out here dominating globally, selling over 1 million bikes a year. Triumph Motorcycles jumped into their entry-level space with the 400 lineup, and it's been a huge success. And even brands like Aprilia and BMW are investing in smaller displacement bikes because that's where a huge chunk of demand is. These bikes aren't about peak performance, they're about value. People want something affordable, easy to ride, cheap to own, and still pretty cool to feel proud of. That's why brands can get away with selling multiple versions of the same platform. Style, price, and approachability goes a long way for the modern buyer. And honestly, it's not a bad thing. If more people are getting into riding, this is how it happens. And that's kind of our core mission here on this channel. We want to get more people on motorcycles. But at the same time, value-driven 400s aren't the machines that are going to get more experienced riders excited. Those live on the other end of the spectrum. These high-end premium halo bikes have become increasingly out of reach for a good majority of motorcycle owners. There are the world-class superbikes like Ducati's V4 or BMW's S1000RR, or there's flagship spaceship ADVs like the BMW R1300 GS or the KTM Super Duke. Hell, even Harley-Davidson's Big Daddy bagger bikes can fall into this category. Priced to the stratosphere and accessible mostly to middle-aged men who feel like they've earned a premium motorcycle after 30 years of middle management. Meanwhile, the middle of the market kind of gets neglected. There are some gems, certainly, but it's mostly ubiquitous 270-degree parallel twins whose updates are relegated to automatic transmissions or smartphone connectivity. Previously, even middleweight bikes would receive meaningful updates. I mean, think about how many times the Yamaha R6 was updated during its tenure. Then, look at how many times they updated the MT-07. There was one meaningful update in a decade with zero change to the engine. So, you end up with this split. New riders want something affordable and approachable, experienced riders with cash want the best of the best, and the middle starts to lose relevance. And when you consider that the average rider in the US quits just within a few years, it kind of makes sense. There just might not be enough long-term customers to justify investing heavily in the middle ground anymore. So I think the split between customers and the short lifespan of most riders has some pretty big consequences. Because while today the market is divided between entry-level bikes and flagship machines, it really wasn't always like this. Back in the early 2000s, when motorcycling was arguably at its peak, there was a clear progression. You started on a 250, you moved up to a 600, and eventually you landed on a leader bike. That was the path. That was the ladder. I mean, even when I started riding, that was like all you thought about. That was the life cycle manufacturers relied on. But that system doesn't work anymore. Now there's mostly two types of customers. There's entry-level riders and premium buyers. The entry-level riders either don't stick around long enough to move up, or they simply can't afford to, so there's less incentive to build a long-term ladder for them. Meanwhile, high-end customers will just buy whatever they want at basically any price. A leader bike, a flagship ADV, something expensive that gets ridden on the occasional weekend and otherwise lives as a very expensive trophy in their garage. And the riders who do stick around, they don't really follow a preordained path anymore. They're not going 300 to 600 to 1,000, they're just buying the best bikes they can afford and sticking with it. There's less desire than ever to constantly level up. Part of that is because motorcycles are more specialized than they've ever been. If power gains are limited by emissions, tech, and practicality, then the only real place to innovate is in specialization. So, we've got tons of categories nowadays. There's sport bikes, naked bikes, ADVs, sport tours, supermotos, tall rounders, and yeah, crossovers, God forbid. I think only Suzuki calls them that, though. So, instead of moving up in power, riders kind of move sideways. They experiment, they try different styles of riding instead of just chasing bigger numbers. Because of that, the old system just breaks down. Manufacturers can't rely on riders naturally moving up through the lineup anymore. That long-term progression, the thing that used to keep people engaged for years, is basically gone. Now the path isn't clear for riders, and it's not clear for manufacturers either. Which is how you end up with racing companies building adventure bikes. We're truly living in godless times. So, I'll say it again, we are past peak motorcycling. They just ran out of meaningful places to go, so we ended up with weird workarounds. Bigger engines to meet emissions, more tech to manage power we didn't ever need in the first place, more features to simulate innovation, bikes built with pricing in mind first and foremost, globalized platforms being built in India, sold in the US. I mean, it's getting crazy. Motorcycles definitely aren't getting worse, I'm not going to tell you that, but I am unsure if they're actually getting better anymore. Maybe they're kind of stuck. And maybe they don't need to get better. Maybe the best motorcycle isn't a motorcycle at all, but the friends we made along the way. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I appreciate it. Let me know in the comments down below if you think we've gone past peak motorcycling. Did you live during the peak motorcycling era I just described? Or are you just sick and tired of seeing brake ducts on CF motos? What are we doing? I'll catch you in the next one. Fact: most mammals are biologically limited to about 1 billion heartbeats in one lifetime. Goodbye.